Hold on. I cannot believe this. Oh, Bill Bogatz is going to be on the fifth camera.
Oh, thank you.
I didn't know he had a computer.
He doesn't.
There you are.
Okay, may I take off my mask? Is that all right?
Yes.
Hello, Wild Bill.
Hello, listen, if this is a faculty meeting, I'm leaving.
Okay. So I'm going to start. All right. So I just want to let April know that there is that background noise. So I'm going to mute Mr. Bogat. Okay, now I don't have background noise, but can you show April? Can you show Bill Bogatz um, how to mute his mic when he's not using it?
I don't know.
All right, I'm gonna mute it myself, and then when I see him talking, when I go to him, I'll unmute it.
Okay.
Okay.
Maybe he can raise his hand. Like in class.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Hi.
Hey.
Hello.
Hello.
This is
What's up?
great. This is great. So, the only person we're missing right now is John Chisholm, and we're going to defer to age as we're talking. So I'm the youngest, so I go first, and then I believe Bill Bogatz is the next youngest, and is that true, Bill?
I'm 69.
Oh,
Yeah, you're
That,
you're
probably.
5 years older than me. Then Mr. Cafarelli. I'm so used to saying Mister.
Yeah, well, you can call me Bob. That's fine.
All right, Bob.
I used to say Mr. Cafarelli was my father.
Yeah, Bob next. Then
Mr. Cafarelli, right here.
we have Jeff Bennett, with whom I've grown very close to in the last
don't
week.
tell them why, please.
I won't.
You hear
I
that?
won't. And
With Bennett 96?
and Mr. Peppe, I'm gonna call you Mister because you're the oldest, and but you're spry and you're 95. So I'm so glad you're all able to join us, and we have a whole bunch of people who were looking forward to this. And so I'm gonna ask you some questions, and then you guys just answer them, and people will be watching, and we'll go from there. So we're gonna start with the youngest teacher, and I'm gonna unmute him, and I'm gonna mute Mr. Pepe. All right, Mr. Bogatz, you came to school a year after I left. So can you tell me your background and how you ended up in Wantagh?
Well, I graduated college in May of 1974, and in the fall, I was subbing at a number of schools. And then in November, I received a call from Mr. Pepe. There was an opening at Wantagh that had just occurred. So I started at Wantagh in November of 1974.
Wow, that's amazing. And how many years did you work for, or are you still there?
Well, I was at Wantagh for the 74-75 school year. And then there was budget cutting and accessing in the social studies department. I was allowed to teach health for 2 years. And never attaining my health certification, I had to leave Wantagh at that time. I also taught at Levittown, Mepham High School, where I went to school. And then I was out of teaching from 78 to 88. And in 1988, Wantagh had called me back. They were hiring 3 social studies teachers for the 88-89 school year.
Hey, April,
Yes.
if you can mute your dad's microphone, that would help.
Okay.
All right.
Let's see. I don't
No, at the bottom of the screen, there's a mute button. See it? Right.
It's muted.
Well, somewhere we're getting feedback. So,
Yeah, I hear the feedback. Yeah.
see, I can turn the feedback off there by turning both computers off, but I don't want to do that because we,
Right.
I feel like Lou Gehrig.
I could try to move him to the other room.
Is Bill and your dad, are they in the same room?
Yeah, I'm gonna move him a little
Yes.
bit.
Oh, that's why. Yeah, I told you.
Better?
No, that's better. That's definitely better.
Okay.
All right. All right, everyone out there. We're just dealing with technical difficulties. Believe me, to get to this point, I am so happy. I'm so happy. So Bill, going back to you, you
Yes.
you came back in '88 and go ahead.
Yes. Mr. Pepe was still the chairman. He was my chairman in 1974. And again, when I came back in 1988. And in 1988, there were 3 openings in the social studies department. So I feel lucky that Wantagh had called me back at that time. And at that time, the junior high became the middle school that year, and economics became a requirement. And I liked economics a lot and taught the course from the 88-89 school year until I retired from full time teaching in June of 2015. But I'm still at school with many extracurricular events still today.
Did you do sports as well?
Did I do what?
Did you help out with sport?
Yes, I had coached middle school soccer for many years. And then when Mr. Kalinowski retired, I took over the announcing. So I've been doing the football and basketball games since 1989.
Wow, that's amazing. So, and
Thank you.
you're a kid from Belmore.
Yes, I grew up in North Belmore next door, graduated from Mepham High School. Yes,
Yeah, wow. So you didn't go very far. I mean, you went
that's correct.
far.
That's
Do
correct.
you live in Wantagh or do you live in Belmore?
Well, for many years, I actually lived in Great Neck, but I recently moved to East Meadow, realizing as I have gotten older that most everything I do is on the South Shore. So now I'm on the South Shore. Finally.
Cool. Cool.
Thank you.
All right. Well, okay. So let's go to the next oldest person, and that'll be Bob Cafarelli. So, what's your story, your backstory, your front story?
I was a graphic arts major from high school through college. And when I graduated from Oswego, specifically for graphic arts, of course, it wasn't called graphic arts then, it was printing job. And I had a friend who has since passed who was a science teacher in Wantagh, Harry Furr. And Harry was the one that enlightened me to the fact that there was going to be an opening, that Walter McEnany, who was the and also the printing teacher, was going to retire. So I went for an interview there, and was very happy to find that I was a fraternity brother. And of course, in the years that I retired, industrial arts teachers were very scarce, to the point that if you didn't have a job by December of your senior year, um, something was very wrong because all the schools came up to Oswego, which was the foremost school for industrial, and actually did the recruiting there. And I had a great career in Wantagh. I was there for 36 years. I retired from teaching, and because there was no one trained to run the machinery, I worked for another 10 years doing the school district, which was quite a joy. I enjoyed that type of work. So I've spent pretty much my whole life there, and
Yeah.
had a great time and great people.
What year was your first year at Wantagh?
I started in September of
19,
as
you broke up. Sorry.
1966, fresh
Okay.
out of college.
Okay. All right. And so your last year was when?
Retired from teaching in 2001.
Okay.
I've been out of the class 21 years. I don't know how that happened so quick.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm just trying to get you guys to put numbers to it because the people listening are coming from all ages, from class of 56 all the way up through recent. So they're asking me, you know, when did these people teach? So that's what we're doing. So that's why I'm asking.
Okay.
Okay. So we go to my best friend now. Jeff Bennett. So when
And I know why he's your best friend too.
I've been teaching him. So
Yeah, we did about 3 hour-and-a-half sessions, I think, to get me to be able to place myself on the computer. It's not my strength, I'll tell you that.
and I do want to say that I liked him so much. I sent him a computer. So he's now an Apple person.
This is mine, huh? Oh, right. I didn't know that.
It is until Thanksgiving when I'm up there and I pick it up.
Glenn, can we talk to each other, or are we just being mic'd separately?
Oh, you're separate. Everyone can hear you. You can hear
okay. I was just
right?
going to say that I came in the same year as Bob did. My entree was through a Newsday ad, but my goal initially after college was to, make the Broadway circuit. Yeah, right. Anyone foolish enough, well, unless you're supremely gifted, and I certainly wasn't as an actor, looked in the want ads and saw an ad for Wantagh, and I said, well, at least that'll get me into teaching for a while and escape the Vietnam War. I've never admitted this publicly, but there it is for all to know. And it wound up, I love teaching, and that's where I stayed till 1996. Wow, talk about like years gone by. It's hard for me to believe that. But there it is.
But where did you go to college?
Queens. I sat next to Paul Simon in several of my classes, and that's literally the truth. We went the same years.
Wow.
Yeah, wow is right. He was in my fraternity.
But you told me that you also taught elsewhere other than Wantagh High School.
Yeah, no, the last 20 years were in Shoreham Wading River.
So the full tenure at Wantagh was
12 years.
12 years.
66 to 78.
Okay. All right.
Mm-hmm.
I got you. All right. And so you're from Queens, I
I'm
presume.
from Queens, and then who said that they lived now in East Meadow? Was it Bob or Bill?
Bill.
Yeah.
Bill Bogatz.
Oh, Bill. Yeah, Bill. I'm an East Meadow boy too. I lived on Richmond Road, overlooking the Meadowbrook Parkway for about 15 years.
Oh, okay.
So we have. Where did you live in East Meadow?
I'm on Newbridge Road,
Oh, yeah.
right next to St. Raphael's Church.
Know it well. Know it well.
Amen.
Okay.
So, Bob, where did you come from? Where did you grow up?
I came from Queens Village. I lived, we called it Queens Village then. Now it's called House Hills, in between Cunningham Park and Alley Pond Park. I was a product of the New York City school system.
Cool. That sounds like fun. So, but you all have New York accents, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Mr. Pepe, it's your turn. So I'm so happy that you're able to join us. I really am. It's you know, I just can't imagine that the history and your love of history. So can you tell us how you ended up at Wantagh High School and where you came from and how you ended up in Wantagh?
Okay. I was in the hardware business, and my daughter was gone, and I was working 7:30 to 6:30, 6 days a week, and I say, I'm never seeing my daughter.
Hold on. All right, that should be fine. Oh, wait. There you go. Sorry, Mr. Pepe.
It's all right. I always wanted to be a teacher, but teachers never made much money in those days, so I couldn't afford to change. But finally, I was fortunate enough to receive an inheritance and was able to take the time off to go back to college and get a master's degree in education and all the other courses I needed to start teaching. I was then offered an opportunity to get to learn about interviews, and they sent me to Wantagh, saying there's no job there, but you can get the experience of having an interview. So I went and had an interview with Mr. Withers, who was the principal then, and he said, there's no job, but we'll keep your name. The next day, he called my house at home and said, tell Mr. Pepe if he wants a job, he can have it. And I didn't even know what the job was, but I was so happy to get a job at Wantagh that I overlooked all the problems.
And so you taught history.
Yes.
And so that's how I mean, Bill Bogatz worked with you and Ron Klizis, I take it.
I hired Bill Bogatz 3 different times.
How about Mr. Klizis?
I hired Mr. Klizis too, only once.
Yeah, I did. I had him for history. I loved history, and Prudence Hiesler. She was my other teacher.
Yeah.
And I loved history and got a 780 out of 800 on the history SAT.
Very good.
So, but anyway, so when did you retire from Wantagh?
1992.
1992.
Or you stayed on coaching.
Then I stayed on and coached wrestling for another 10 years.
Yes. And a lot of people have written on Facebook that they loved you as a coach. They have high regard for you as a wrestling coach. So
That's very nice.
yeah, we're going to be having calls at 8:15, and some people have already told me they're going to call in. So I have to unmute Bill, and I'm going to mute Mr. Pepe. Okay. Add to the stream. Okay, Bill, I was wondering, what were some of the most challenging and enjoyable things about being at Wantagh, at
Well,
high school?
well, I've said for the past few years that Wantagh has been a utopia. The most challenging is, I think, the first year of teaching, when you find out what works and what doesn't work, and all the learning that has to take place for a teacher as well as the students. The first year, I think, is always the most challenging. But Wantagh has always been a place where the faculty, the staff, the parents, and the students have made it a utopia throughout the years. And it's quite a pleasant place to be.
Yeah, that is amazing. I had a brother who graduated in '62 and another in '68, and it, you know, it, they both said it was a great school, and it was a great school when I went. Although I graduated early, so I could move on and do other things, but but so are there funny stories that you have? Any
Oh, boy.
Too many, too many.
Yes. Uh, I think, I should have thought of that question before, so I could have been prepared more.
You
But
could you could ask how we got to work on snow days when it was snowing.
oh, yes, okay. Well, Mr. Cafarelli brought up a point. There were a few days when I wasn't sure that school would be open because of snow, and I didn't want to miss any school. So, living in Great Neck, I would take an early morning train from Great Neck to Penn Station, and then take a train from Penn Station to Wantagh, and
Ouch.
sometimes find out that school was closed. Where I lived in Great Neck was very hilly, and if the day was snowy or icy, it could be rather dangerous. So I sometimes took the train and received a few laughs from other faculty when I heard about that.
That's amazing. So, um, so Bob, what were some of your fondest memories? What are some of what was it like when you started? How did it change?
Well, it was interesting because I had I'll say, students in my class who were a year or two younger than I was. To this day, I still remember a lot of their names.
Thank you.
My classes generally were small. Those of you that are familiar with what the print shop was, the print shop was the shop office that was converted to the print shop. So I was very fortunate that a large class for me was probably 12 students. And the thing was a lot of, and in those days they were the guys, a lot of the guys I picked up as sophomores, um, I would have for 3 and a lot of them stayed and worked in the shop. We did the printing for the school district, and I have quite a few former students who are in the printing trades, which is always these. Uh, today the emphasis is going to college, and there's nothing left in the schools for the college-bound student. In our days, we felt good. The whole shop program, when you stop and think, there was 11 of us between the high school and the junior high. Now there's, I think, one, and the kids really are being cheated now. That was one of the sorrowful things. I used to go to meetings when there was the conversion from industrial to technology, and it just, I would say to the people in the middle school, well, what you're teaching is fine for middle school, but you're not offering life experiences for the high school student that's not going to college. And it still is that way. Um, but as Bill said, we had call it the Wantagh family. We had a great group of people in all the departments. Um, and I have a lot on Facebook of former students, and it's fascinating to me to see kids who are now grandparents. My favorite line on Facebook is, "How did you get you bypass the whole thing. But it was a wonderful thing. I started a summer printing program because, excuse me, when I came back in September, there was so much work to be done, and we didn't have any trained students. So except for maybe the first 2 or 3 years of my master's degree, we worked probably till the middle of August. And that way I got into contact with a lot of the kids who knew that we were there and would stop and share stories. It was great. As I said, I worked for another 10 years after I retired doing the printing. Did well after that 10 years, but I'm not going into that at this point.
Yeah. So is there BOCES still?
I so, but one of my complaints with BOCES when I wasn't a complaint, but an open school night where I had a student who was really interested in printing, suggest to his parents, why don't you send him to BOCES? He will learn a lot more than he's going to get here. And that right away raised their hackles because my kid's not special ed. He's not going. And I would go to meetings and say, you need to change the name of your vocational program because the parents, they hear BOCES, they hear special ed. And again, students of mine that went into the BOCES program, their complaint was the first year there were a lot of students in the program who just were going there to get out of the high school. There was no color. By the second year, it was a more intense program. And I always used to suggest, require, if a kid wants to go to BOCES for printing, require him to take my course for a semester or a year and see what they were talking about. They would go there, and then after a year, they go, this is not what I wanted. I'm getting my hands dirty. I'm out of here.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if there is even a BOCES program. My grandsons go to Connecticut, and there is the BOCES program, but they can't get into it till their junior year. And at least with my one grandson, what he's in is a freshman and a sophomore. By the time the junior year came, he wasn't interested in that anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. I know that when I was growing up, my next door neighbor ended up doing BOCES and learning how to build, learning electricity and building. And
Absolutely.
he ended up, that's his lifetime career, and he ended up being a builder. And
we had a program in the 60s. I think I forgot what they were, might have been 6-week courses. Rodriguez taught a course in home maintenance where the kids built a wall, they ran electricity, they ran water, they spackled, things in your everyday life.
yeah, and it really worked out.
Yeah, and now the kids don't have experience. So now a kid, my former students are in the printing trades. I like to think, had they not taken my course, they never would have thought about that. I have one former student who's an elevator repair guy, and one of the questions I always ask, how did you get to that? The last time I saw you, you were doing this and this. Now repairing elevators. And I didn't give the up and down joke, which Al Peppe would have said.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I went to the PhD level and ended up being a computer guy. And my dad was like the proudest father there could be because he said, "Oh, I don't know how you know these things about computers, but I'm so glad you have a career." Because I guess he just had a sense that he was a career guy, AT&T. So that was what was important to him. So I
My
made him
father
go ahead.
used to say, you should have a trade and a profession. One
Mhm.
can do the other. And I believe that.
Yeah.
Well, I love my time at Wantagh. It was for me was completely new. I never had any student teaching. I was in something called the Intensive Teacher Training Program at Adelphi University, and I never had student teaching, so it was all new. And there was just so much help from the members of the faculty. We used to joke about the Wantagh family, but we really were like a family. And teachers helped each other and helped with me to get over the rough spots. And I really was very grateful for everything at Wantagh.
No, that's great. That's the sense I get from everyone who I talk to. I run a bunch of different Wantagh pages, and they're, in interviewing the classes that I do, um, everyone is so happy that they went to Wantagh High School and that they had such good teachers. So Jeff, I'm going to embarrass you for 1 second. I've told you
Uh-oh.
this. I've already told you this once, and I'm not putting down anybody else, but Jeff is the most desired person that people wanted on this
Oh,
show.
come on now.
There was the other person was Mrs. Haycox, but
Oh my.
she's not around. So that's why I worked so hard at making sure you were online. So because there are so many students out there who appreciated your writing, and you're teaching them how to write, teaching them how to read, teaching them, good things. And what are some of the stories you have over your 12 years at Wantagh?
Well, I want to return to CAP for a moment. Speaking about appreciation, there are a handful of students that I also have remained sometimes in touch with, and many of them said that the experience they had in that class was a reason to come to school. And do you remember Ray Young, Bob, by chance?
I do.
Yeah, I mean, he said that he would have stayed there all day if he had the chance, because the kids talked about getting a chance to get up out of their seat and do something in school. So I just wanted to say that. Funny stories, I don't know. I taught at East New York Vocational and Technical High School for a half year, and you can imagine how much the kids in my classes, they were all guys, and I had to teach them the parts of speech and advanced vocabulary, and it was pure bedlam. I had very little to give to them, and they kind of liked me, but that wasn't enough to get them to shut up and listen to anything I had to say. So the next year I got to Wantagh, and like Bill and Bob said, tremendous camaraderie among the staff, and the kids shut up and listened. They would actually talk about their classes outside of class, and at Holiday Park, for example, the parents wanted to make sure that their kids did excellent work, so that was something that spread through the classes, and I loved it. I don't know about funny stories. I did have a funny story at East New York that contrasts brilliantly with the way I felt about Wantagh. I said, how the hell am I going to get these kids to listen and be interested in something? So I got a brainstorm, and I read them for half a period the entire text of Edgar Allan Poe's The Telltale Heart. I said, this is a scary mystery story. They're going to listen to this and maybe even be a little scared. So it began. What I forgot was that the vocabulary is rather advanced. I mean, I still remember the first sentence being, I was sick unto death with my soul that had brought me into a place of unutterable loneliness, So I sensed as I was going that the kids were quiet, but in a kind of threatening way. until one of them yelled out, "What is this shit, Shakespeare or something? Is this the way this class is going to be run?" You know. So, and then of course everybody took up the chant, and I guess the moral of the story it was nice to be welcomed at Wantagh. Well, you're right. The camaraderie was terrific. I was in the junior high school for 4 years, and then finally ended up the last 8, I guess it was, in the high school.
Wow.
That
So,
was an awakening, boy. I'll tell you though.
so I wonder what it was like during the years that you were there. Um, not so much Bill, but the other three. Crossing over that chaotic time. Particularly class of '71 when I interviewed them. They were the most tumultuous class, during their time because they had 68 riots. They had
Kent State.
Kent State. I remember that we went out on the lawn, the front lawn, at Kent State to protest the next day, and I just can't imagine what it must have been like. For the three of you who are old enough to do that, and by the time Bill was teaching, there were no protests at that point because Vietnam wasn't a big thing. But the class of '71 was, just think of that. That was the central time, the biggest issue, 69 to 71. Vietnam, and it was a difficult time, and I was wondering how that affected your classes. Did it come into the class? Was it something you had to deal with? And we could start with you, Jeff.
I don't remember how the classes were affected, but instead of the lawn, I do remember something in the auditorium where most of the class of '71 was present. And Dr. St. Clair, the then superintendent of schools, gave an address to try to calm everybody down, but the kids weren't in the mood to be calmed down. There was a lot of, very agitated crosstalk. And, you could tell that they weren't just making speeches. They were deeply affected by that. As a teacher, I wanted to say a few things myself, but fortunately kept my mouth shut, if I remember correctly. And that's my memory of that time. And it was the class of '71, by the way, exactly. That was in the auditorium that day.
Yeah. What was it like for you, Mr. Cafarelli?
I can remember a couple of days when things were particularly agitating. Again, I say the boys because late in my career, there were no girls. The only girls I knew in Wantagh were the girlfriends of the guys that I had in class. And they would come in and say, you know what, we don't feel like let's just talk. And I said, okay. So we grabbed some stools and we just had what we would probably call then a rap session.
Yeah. Yeah.
They had asked me because I was a product of the '60s. What was it like to be in college? And did you do this and did you do that? And I answered them, quite truthfully. One said, "Well, did you ever smoke when you were in college?" And I said, "You know what? No, because in my environment, we might have drank a few beers too many, but weren't big in the early '60s with most of the college kids. There was one group that was heavy into the drugs, and that was the thespians. And so that was what they were more interested in what my life in the '60s. And
Yeah.
it was was a very unusual time.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's amazing because we as a student, I just remember you guys seeming so old, but you weren't. You were just, you were my brother's age. My brother was born in 44. So, it was just like being around someone my brother's age. And Mr. Bogatz isn't that much older than I am. So it's amazing. And Mr. Pepe is just 2 years younger than my dad. So but the point is, you think that you guys are different, really, but then if I met you in a bar or a restaurant or stuff, which I never did, um, it would bring you back. It would bring you down to earth in a way. It would, for me, whenever I met a teacher later in life, it was amazing for me to find out, wow, there really wasn't that much difference, in the way things were. But I've told Jeff this. My son went to boarding school, and it was a Quaker school, and they call their teachers by their first name. They have these discussions that I wish I had had, in my classes, and it's quite amazing. I wanted to ask Mr. Pepe a question. Mr. Pepe, so during this period of time, during the 60s and 70s in history class, how do you think um, your classes were affected by what was going on? Did the students want to know old history or new history or?
They really wanted to know, they wanted an explanation of what was going on. They didn't understand what was going on with the different riots and things like that. And they wanted to know, they wanted me to explain why this is happening and what they can do about it. And I think that was the main gist of the classes, um, how it affected them more than how it affected the rest of the country.
Yeah. Did so you specialized in American history?
Yes.
Yeah. It's so you would just tell me, you would go from beginning to end? You would start in the 1600s through.
It was usually starting with the American Revolution.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we usually
So,
went up to about World War One.
and I forget, did you have an honors class in history?
Yes.
So that must have been fun. I wish I had. I loved Prue Heisler's class, and but I only went to 11th grade, so
Oh, okay.
then I left. So um, so Jeff, you had honors English as well, I take it.
I didn't actually. I taught 11 and 10 and 9. And the only other thing I did was some plays. And really, that's Paul Carrick, who I saw only once after we all left the school, taught all the honors classes.
Okay,
So
all right.
can't really comment on that.
What's interesting with Facebook, I can still hear from students that I had many years ago that are retired themselves. At least 40 different students
Yeah.
that I hear from. So it's very rewarding.
Yeah, I mean, say what you will about Facebook, it really has brought people together. And, it's brought them together for good reasons. Some of them are bad. Um, but it's really given me a way to celebrate Wantagh and bring classes together. When Facebook was brand new, I set up all the pages for the different classes through 1956 through I think it was probably 2010, and
Oh.
it's fun seeing them used. I also did that so that they couldn't lock me out, so I could see what was happening. But I'm gonna ask Bill Bogatz a question. So, Bill, you taught health, um, and you were with Gary Soka, and
Yes, at that time, I received a lot of help from Gary Soka and Fran Nocella was teaching health, and I forgot her last. Oh, Jerry Fontana.
yeah,
They were all teaching health at that time. At that time, you can teach out of your certification area for 2 years. And then if you did not attain the certification, you would have to leave the area. So I never did go for the certification in health, although I took courses while I taught health. And Glenn, if I may, about 10 years ago, I volunteered to give tours of the high school building to classes that were celebrating reunions 20,
yeah,
25, 30, 40 years. So you mentioned the class of 1971. On September 11th, that Saturday, I gave a tour of the building to the class of 1971 and had a chance to meet lots of them. But I've given about 7 or 8 tours in the past 10 years. And most of the time is spent by the students asking me about the faculty members and Mr. Peppe, Mr. Cafarelli, Mr. Bennett. Many students have asked about them. So I just wanted them to know that. And giving a tour of the building is lots of fun. I have a key where I can enter rooms and show them new parts of the building. There's always a few students that try their combo on the locker to see if it still works. Of course, the lockers are new. But
yeah,
the teachers that are with us tonight have always been asked for by the classes that come back to the school to have a tour.
yeah, yeah. And you were at the event that I helped organize in the year 2000, right? Um,
Yes, yeah, that was quite an event. You had multi classes then.
yeah, it we if we were going to do it, we were going to do it big. So we had 2,400 paid admissions in the year 2000. It was my 25th. Um, I always stick with the class of 75, but it was my 25th reunion. And we had Mr. Johnson, who was the music teacher from Beach Street School, come, and he was 96. And people and Maz showed up, Mr. Mazzarelli and you know Harry Jacqueline, and it was amazing, and people just had such a fantastic time. And I do you think it was magical for us? Will that magic continue when the class of 2021 comes back for their 25th reunion? Will they have similar great memories of the school?
I think they certainly will. Wantagh being in on the eastern edge of Nassau County has retained a suburban feel that a lot of students are happy that they had as they grew up, and it's still that feel of suburbia. So I think that feeling will be there. And Glenn, I want to compliment you because if I remember correctly, when you put together that multi-year reunion, you did face some resistance from the school, I believe, that was a little apprehensive of all the people that would be showing up. And you had to do a lot of work, I think, to convince them that this reunion would be successful.
Yeah, we had to hire police. We had to hire the fire department. Yeah, we had to count on everything going well. And but I actually lived in Jamaica, the country, and helped organize it from there. And I got Sandals and Air Jamaica to give prizes, and those are what we used as the carrot to have people show up. And classmates.com was brand new, and they said, "Oh, this is fantastic. This is a great idea." and they gave us all the swag for the event, which was a lot of fun. But we definitely had police all over, plainclothes police, and a couple of police cars up front, up top. So it was fun, and I do remember you at John. You went to another reunion at Johnny Malone's, I think, um, or there were some reunions that you where I met you. It's the first time I met you. It was at a bar in Wantagh.
Yes,
And
there was a reunion at Lily Flanagan's that was also a comedy show, if I remember. And Mr. Thompson was doing stand up at Lily Flanagan's at that time. Was he from your class, Bill Thompson?
no,
Okay, then he must have been 76 or 77. But they had a mini reunion there.
yeah, yeah. Well, I would sneak into reunions every so often whenever I was going to be on Long Island. So so I want to go to Bill. I mean to Bob. So what are what do you think in 25 years from now? Will it be the same? Will students be longing for their teachers and be looking for Mr. Bogatz to give them a tour?
I certainly hope so, that we were unique as a faculty. Uh, I'm sure the members of the faculty in the school system now feel the same way. Um, say yes. Uh, I think the kids are involved in school as much as the students that we had were. And generally, people don't change. They,
Yeah,
as you said, you look at Facebook and you see what some of these I keep calling them kids, adults, and you see their families, and it's very heartwarming to see that.
yeah, that's cool. So I'm going to turn Bill's microphone off. I'm going to turn Mr. Pepe's on. Mr. Pepe, how did you get involved in being the wrestling coach? Because I thought there was another wrestling coach before you, correct? When I was in school.
Yeah, well, I wrestled in high school, and when I got to Wantagh and they needed a junior high wrestling coach, and I applied for it and got the job, and I couldn't believe they were paying me to do something I love to do. So, but I really enjoyed coaching at Wantagh, and I did it for more than 30 years. And
Whoa.
I still hear from some of my wrestlers. Among them, Tommy Ryan, who is the head wrestling coach at Ohio State right now. And he was one of our wrestlers. So it's very, very rewarding.
Yeah, I've heard that there are some athletes who've come out of Wantagh, and actors, actresses, other famous people. The class of '76 is trying to do one of these gatherings, and one of the people is big on Broadway. He produces a bunch of shows on Broadway.
Scott Delman.
Yes,
Possibly?
Scott
Yep.
Tillman.
Yep.
Yes.
I remember that.
Yes.
Yeah, his name is on every other show. It's amazing. I don't know how he did that.
Maybe he would buy one of your books.
Yeah, I don't
How
think he
about
needs that.
the faculty member who taught science, who left Wantagh to become a stand-up comic, Steve Solomon.
Oh,
Had a
sure.
show on Broadway. Still does shows in Florida and on cruises. I've
Did
stayed
you
in
see it?
contact
Did you
with
see
him.
it, Bob?
He played in in the Patchogue Theater about 3 years ago. And we
Right.
went out there and he
Yeah.
came out from behind the stage and we had a nice chat. Kids would tell me Steve Solomon stories, which probably today you would get arrested for. But the kids called him Mr. Wizard. He was also the AV guy. Google
Yes.
Steve Solomon, you'll see a lot of his routines on computer. Still funny. Still funny.
Yeah, I've heard about that. Hey, can you tell me about your group, the Romeo group that you use? Is that what you call it, Romeo?
Romeo, retired old men eating out, of which Bill is a member and Al is a member. And we started out with probably about 25 guys. We would eat once a month at various restaurants, have dinner. There was about 25 of us to begin with, and we're kind of down to 8 now between
Ooh.
the guys that have moved away and quite a few have passed away. But it's still nice. I haven't been there in the last couple of months because between the pandemic and my wife has some, and I just couldn't, and I miss it. Even though we tell the same stories, but we still laugh just as hard with the same stories that we hear every month. Romeos, retired old men eating out, and when we're in the restaurant and someone makes a comment, saying a bunch of guys, you tell them that, and they usually get a good laugh. And I think the women started one, Juliet's Just Us. I forgot what the rest stood for, but it was kind of like the Red Hat group.
Wow. Did Mr. Kalinowski used to be part of that group and then he moved to Florida?
No, he still comes there. He spends half the year up here, and when he's on Long Island, he comes to dinner. And
Wow.
it's good to see these people.
Yeah, I would love to have your group meet here and one time and let people watch you all interact and talk.
Watch the
But
show.
who'll pick up the bill?
Yeah, well, we have to do it online, but I'll offer you all free Mountain Dew.
Oh, all right.
So
Well,
that'll
if you're on Long Island at the first Monday,
okay. I'll let
That's
you
a
know.
good deal.
I'll let you know. That would be great. So Mr. Pepe,
Yes.
so my father was a World War II veteran, and I went to your page, and you were in the war. You were
Right.
So you probably went in 43 because he went in 41. Would that be correct?
44 I went in.
Okay. And what service were you in?
Air Force.
Oh, wow.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's right.
That's
I was
big.
an air cadet, and then they closed the program down. So I stayed in and became a mechanic.
Cool.
A crew chief on a 747.
Wow. Wow. My brother's father, we have different fathers. He served in World War II as well, Army Air Force. He was a pilot in the China Burma CBI.
Wow.
But he was killed in 1945
Oh,
Right at the
over
end.
over Burma, and
terrible.
so when I was 19, I took the summer and went to Thailand and Burma and found the cemetery that he's buried in and took a
Wow.
picture. Took pictures of his grave, and it was the first thing my mother realized that had saw a cemetery, saw a funeral. I'm not a funeral, a stone with his name on it. So
Very nice.
yeah, so it was interesting.
Yeah.
So, but my father was very proud of his service, and I'm sure you are too. So, He was, he just loved talking about in his final years. Loved talking about the military. He never spoke about it much when we were kids, but anyway, we're coming up on 5 minutes left, and I wanted to get back to Jeff. So, Jeff, is there any influence? And this is my influence question. I'm going to ask all of you this so you can think about this. Is there someone who influenced you to become a teacher, make you want to be a teacher?
I always liked explaining things, but there was no one person. I kind of fell into it, as I said at the beginning of the talk. But my passion for teaching really came alive with the two plays I did just before I left. It was a little delicate because Doris Haycox was the drama teacher, but Slattery, who was the principal, then said, well, get a sponsor. And the Wantagh Youth Council came in, and we did two plays in 150, 152. You guys remember that space? I don't even know if it's still there. Is it? You know, the double study hall?
Yeah, yep.
It's still there? Yeah. So, I mean, you talked about influence. That is where I felt the most alive as a teacher, because it wasn't formal rows and, take out your homework or your vocabulary. And the kids who were in that, Scott Delman was one of them. I still remember all the names and the experience. I know that certainly is something that stayed with them, and it most definitely stayed with me. So I kind of twisted your question a little bit. But
Oh, that's good. I know that I'm still friends with Nancy Blake.
I've seen her since I left. Yep.
And Nancy still does acting.
I know that.
Still loves it. So,
Yep.
So Mr. Bogatz, was there
Yeah.
anyone who influenced you? What made you become a teacher?
Well, it was just the whole experience of going to school in North Belmore, where I went elementary, junior high, and high school. And I loved school. It was always a positive experience. And I had known a few people that had gone to Oneonta, where I went to college, and that was a big teacher college at that time. And in college, I loved the courses, but when you want to become a teacher, it's that student teaching experience. And luckily, it was a positive one. I student taught at a school about 5 miles outside of Oneonta, K through 12 in a brick building, each class maybe 30, 35 students in the whole grade. It was quite different from growing up on Long Island, but a positive experience. And then, of course, I received lots of support from Mr. Peppe when I first came into Wantagh. So it made for a very smooth transition.
Oh, well, that's cool. So, Bob, anyone influence you into becoming a teacher?
Yeah, my big influences were my high school shop teachers, especially my graphic arts teacher, who encouraged me all along. And there were two other Oswego who were also teachers, also teaching industrial arts, who encouraged me. And my printing teacher, he said, he used to like be a lab assistant. Instead of going to phys ed, I would go to the shop, and he would give me a pass to skip gym, which he did. And I worked with my students there, and he said, this is something that you can do, that you would enjoy it, because I loved printing. To me, it was the aspect of it. It wasn't a job to me. It was just someplace to go every day and do the things that you like. Excuse me. He was a master printer in the union and encouraged me. And he said, you try it. If you don't like it, I'll get you into the union. And for both of us, the man died my freshman year. And I felt I was lost. But through his encouragement, and I career, and I I still have dreams of jobs that I had problems with, and I wake up in the morning and said, "Oh man, I still dreamt about printing this staff directory." But
I
so
I have
definitely
one of
was a
those.
teacher.
I have one of those staff directories just to my right.
Oh, how'd you
Um,
get that?
I
We
don't know. Mr. Lennox gave me 40 years worth of yearbooks,
oh,
and
okay.
it included printing stuff.
I have all the yearbooks I taught, and a couple of years after. Matter of fact, I gave you one that you were short.
Right.
And they're sitting there, and they've already, I'm pretty sure, been promised the Preservation Society when the time comes. But I still, if I hear a name, I'll go down to the yearbook and I'll scrounge through it.
Yeah. Yeah. The I had five people from the class of 63. Four of them were women. The number one student, the number two student, and the number four, student who in order, of GPA. And they became teachers. And they said, well, we became teachers because it was that choice. It was that or an MRS. And
Right.
So that was their influence. But male teachers, it's very interesting to to hear what you've been saying and how you made that choice.
Well,
So go ahead.
and some of the difference that we found in later years when we would go to lunch, myself and so when we would be talking about our summer jobs, I said, and they looked at me like my head was on crooked. They go, "Why did you work during the summer?" I said, "Started teaching, we were making no money." And I said, I would say that 95% of the male teachers all had summer jobs. I worked on the beach until I started the summer printing program. Uh, Other guys did a multitude. I said, because when we started teaching, there was no money. I remember in Long Island Jewish Hospital in Employees Health Service, and I came home with my first check, and she looked at it, $100. She said, the elevator operators in the hospital. And I said, okay, get me a job. Uh, but we didn't go to it for the money. And that's what I try to emphasize to these, because the teachers go, you worked every summer? Why did you go into teaching? Well, not for time off, certainly. So it was different. It was a different world.
Yeah. No, I understand. Mr. Pepe, now that you look back, is teaching the most enjoyable part of your life? You
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I loved every minute of it. And I used to tell people I never had a bad day, and nobody believes me. But it's really true. I just loved it.
That's great. I That's fantastic. And on that note, I will say that I am fully appreciative of all of you participating in this. I know that you have lots of things you could be doing with your Monday evenings. I'd like to probably have you individually back and then pair you up with some students. And that way we get some interactivity with some of the students who have really said that they wanted to talk to you. And we can get Scott Delman and Nancy Blake with you, Jeff. And so there's also some famous musician out of the class of 76 too. It's not Ray Matuza in 75, but there's somebody in 76 or 77, famous musician. But anyway, I do appreciate your time. It's been fantastic having you. I'm really glad it worked out for Bill Bogatz.
Thank you.
He was writing to me saying, I don't have a computer that will run this program. So, and So we still have John Chisholm to interview. So if we could get Mr. Klizus, that would be great. And I can interview them at some point. So anyway, fellas, thank you very much. I'm sorry I ended up not taking any calls because I really preferred just listening to what you guys had to say. So, all right, I'm going to get
For all you do
Oh, well,
Thank
between
you.
the memorial
Thank you.
site and this, it's great.
yeah. Well,
I hope you get Mr. Klizus. He was the best.
yeah.
Hmm.
And don't forget April. She did your daughter. She really helped out.
Yeah, no problem.
Yes.
Yeah. All right, everyone. Thank you very much. Take care.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
Good
See you
night.
guys.